Hello, everyone. It's Fiona here, and welcome back to the Vedic Astrology Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be speaking to you about prosperity and annihilation of a house. This is a technique that is outlined for us in Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. It's in chapter 11, and it's verses 14 to 16. And this is a technique that is specific to houses. So it asks us to look at all of the indicators for the house to give us an idea whether manifestation or karma is going to be supported or not supported by those placements in relation to the house. And today I want to run through with you a review the kind of questions that we're looking at to decide whether there's more support or less support. And then also where I'm interested in, coming from that life coaching background, is how do we work with a house that maybe is not supported? So what are some of the things that we can do when we research a house and notice that it's suffering some annihilation? So let's begin by returning our minds and revisiting this chapter from Brihat Parashara. Now, as we mentioned, this is related to judging the house. So this is part of Unit 2 of our Asheville Vedic Astrology Apprenticeship Program, but I'm sure it's in all of those courses that you guys are studying as well. And the first question that we really want to ask ourselves is about the house. So looking at the chart and the house that you want to find out about, is it conjunct with a benefic or Rashi aspected by a benefic? So this is our first hint that there might be some support if the house has a benefic in it or is getting Rashi aspects from benefics. And this is because, as we know from our discussions around Ishtar and Kashta and the way planets interact with us and their view on our life, if you want to look at it that way, that some planets, the benefics, they're a bit like cheer squads. You know, they just want to support us and they want to give us the resources that we need or that we think we need to achieve what we think we want. So having a benefic in the house or aspecting the house is going to be giving us support towards prosperity. And the flip side, of course, of that is that we need to also look at the house and see if there is a malefic there or if it's being Rashi aspected by a malefic. And for this, you want to consider, for example, also Rahu and Ketu as malefics. And you want to have a look at the moon, whether it's waxing or waning, and whether Mercury is with a benefic by itself or if it is with a cruel planet already, because that's going to change a little bit the way that Mercury's operating. So our first question around prosperity and annihilation is around, are there benefic planets supporting the house? Are there malefic planets interacting with the house? And what we know about malefics is that rather than being our cheer squad, they are going to be those obstacles and challenges that prove to us that we can do what it is that we so want to achieve. So they, in inverted commas, support us by challenging us and believing in us enough to throw down those hard obstacles and really build our confidence. So in some ways, all of these planets, right, are helping us to achieve our karma. That's what they're here for. They just got these different approaches. And the way that we perceive it is that the benefic planets are supportive and the malefic planets are challenging. So that's our first question. Then again, because this is a house-based assessment, we want to ask the Lord of the house, is it a benefic planet? Is it with a benefic planet or is it with a malefic planet? So we're asking about the company that the house lord is keeping. Because as we know, when you're conjunct with another planet, you guys are jostling for the energy in that house, and this is going to have an impact on what the house lord can do in relation to supporting its own house. So for prosperity, is the house lord with a benefic planet? For annihilation, is the house lord with a malefic planet? And then we want to dig in a little bit as we analyze and judge the prosperity or annihilation of this house. We want to dig a little bit down into some of the avashtas, the Baladi avashtas and the Jagrati avashtas. So go have a look at the state of Baladi avashta for the planet that owns this house. And if it is adult, that is Yuva avashta, or if it is teen, which is Kumara avashta, we say that karma is already in this lifetime, it's ripe. And that is supportive. It means that there's a bit of support there for the karma to manifest. So those would be considered either Yuva or Kumara avashta as points towards prosperity. And on the flip side of that, if it is in old state, Vritta avashta, or if it is Mitra avashta, that is dead, then we're going to count those towards annihilation, because that karma has already expressed itself in previous incarnations, and in this lifetime it doesn't have a lot left to bring itself into manifestation. So therefore, we're not going to see that support for that karma. Okay, now next we can look at the Jagrati avashtas and ask ourselves, is this planet awake? And if it is, we count that as a point for prosperity, because that's going to help us achieve what we want with that house. The attention is available to focus on that house. And on the flip side, is the Lord asleep or Shushupti? Because when the Lord is asleep, the planet that owns the house is asleep, the attention is not naturally available. So you want to look at awake and asleep. And then we can ask ourselves about the planet that owns the house. Is that planet in the 10th house? Because we know that the 10th house is activated, the most activated house in the chart. So if the planet that owns the house is in the 10th house, then we know that that's going to be supportive. And you yourself as the astrologer, and as you practice this technique, you probably have your own expansions around the 10th house question. So you might be very strict and say, is the Lord in the 10th house? And if so, give it 1 point, if not 0 points. But you might like to expand that definition a little bit and think about all angles. Is the planet in an angle? You might like to think if the planet is in a trine. So I'm going to leave you with what you think is auspicious and supportive. And on the flip side for that question, we want to see, is the planet that owns the house, is it with, inverted commas, an evil house lord? So is it with the lord of the 3rd, the 6th, the 8th, the 11th, or the 12th? And just note that. So sometimes it might be with several of those lords. So you might end up with several indications there. And a really important question you want to look at is the house lord aspecting its own house? And obviously, if it is, that is helpful. That is a vote for prosperity. If the house lord is not aspecting its own house, we put it in the column of annihilation, because it's just that much harder for, we're talking about Rashi aspect here, by the way, for the planet to have the influence over its own house. It's distracted and got its vision on other things, not on the house that it owns. And then the final questions we can ask on the prosperity side is we can look at whether Mercury or Jupiter are Rashi aspecting the house. And this is because those two planets have a kind of manifesting ability, an extra ability to bring karma into action. And if they are aspecting the house, we're going to take that as a sign of support and put it in the prosperity column. And then on the flip side of that is not a directly opposite question, but the question is the house lord, that is the planet that owns the house that we're thinking about, is that planet being defeated in planetary war? And you can check that in your Shadbala table if you're here on Kala like me. So we have these various questions that help us to judge whether a house is receiving support to manifest its karma, or whether it is actually going to find it quite difficult. Very occasionally, you're going to find houses that all of everything you look at just lines up beautifully on the prosperity side. And very occasionally, you're going to find houses where all of the indicators are on the annihilation side. Maybe that's a little bit more common, I suppose. Most of the time, you're going to see a bit of both and some mixed indications. And I think that this reflects most of our experience in life, doesn't it? That, we have mixed results with things. Even houses that we feel strong in, we know that sometimes it goes better than other times. So that's reflecting reality. And I think that this also brings up a good point with the judgment of the houses, that this is not a standalone technique that you bet the whole chart on. This is not the indicator that determines everything, and that if somebody's got an annihilated house, they're never going to achieve anything in that area. If somebody's got a prosperous house, it's just going to be success, success, success. I have not found that to be the case. I think that this is one of those techniques that is really good to add into the mix, and especially if you want to look at what might be some of the underlying issues that are causing infertility for a house, a lack of success for a house or an area of life, then this prosperity and annihilation technique is a great place to add detail and research into your investigation. So I think it's important to keep in mind that this is a tool to be used in integration with other tools as well. When we have done our analysis of the house and we see those mixed indicators, or prosperous or annihilation, so whatever you find, what I think is really worth examining then is where there are houses that are annihilated and they are important to the client, they're important to the person, there's something that the person wants to achieve. What can we learn from the formula of prosperity and annihilation that helps us consciously make changes that will give us success or more success in those houses that are suffering from annihilation? And so for that, then let's return to our questions. You want to have done your house analysis and then be looking at what is it that is causing the annihilation. And now let's just go through that annihilation column one by one and talk about remedies that might be helpful for clients or ourselves in areas of life that we are vulnerable to, that they're important to us, they're meaningful to us, but they're not working as well. And we've seen that the annihilation score is high. So first of all, we have, is the house conjunct or Rashi aspect by a malefic? So this is something that is going on in the chart that you're looking at that is contributing to annihilation. What can be great here is finding that way to reframe these malefic Rashi aspects or being conjunct to malefic, to look at them as challenges, and in fact to look at them almost as votes of confidence that we are, in fact, if from the planetary perspective, the planet is so confident that we can achieve this, that it's kind of giving us the extra challenge rather than making it softly and super easy. And I don't know whether you have experiences in your life, but those people, those bosses and managers who set out challenges for you are actually often the ones who grow you the most and who give you confidence in yourself because you solved the problem yourself. They didn't spoon feed you. You actually did it yourself. So if that is the cause of the annihilation, perhaps a way to work with that is to reframe, to ground ourselves in an example of someone who has challenges and brought out the best in us, or the archetype of someone like a famous movie character or book character that brings out the best in us. For example, Snape, right, comes to mind from Harry Potter, because in some ways, right from the beginning of our meeting Snape through the eyes of Harry Potter, we don't realize it, but Snape knows how strong Harry Potter has to become, and the best thing that he can do is challenge and question and really make sure that Harry Potter learns how to solve problems on his feet and be creative in his solutions, have confidence in his own abilities, because at the end of the story, at the end of the day, that's what he's going to need the most. So Where can we change our appreciation of Snape in our life? And that might be around our malefic planets. Okay. And this then comes to our second annihilation question. Is the house lord with a malefic planet? And in this case, this can give us a lot of information depending on what that relationship is. So, for example, it might be with a malefic planet, but that planet may be a natural friend, for example. And this forms the other component of our bhavas and houses second unit in the Astral Vedic Astrology Apprenticeship Program. So that's probably why I'm thinking about it as we're talking about this. But perhaps, it's Mars with the Sun, or it's Jupiter with the Sun. These guys are natural friends. So yes, it's a malefic, but they might actually find a way to work well together, and you might be able to help the client refocus on what is naturally supportive about that relationship, that conjunction. The house lord is with a malefic planet. What is naturally helpful about that might be a good way to go if they happen to be natural friends, if you're lucky enough. And then you might also have another angle there depending on what houses they're ruling. For example, if it is with a malefic planet, but that malefic planet owns the house in question, you might have some leverage there as well. So I think this is a chance to dig deeper into what levers can I pull that might empower me in this relationship with the malefic planet. And so now let's look at our next couple of questions. Sometimes they seem to go together. We're looking at, is the house lord old or dead? Are they Vriddha or Mrita Avashta? And this one maybe doesn't present as much problems in some ways from the client's perspective, because this is almost like the force of the karma that is trying to be born into the life experience during this person's incarnation. So if it is Vriddha or Mrita, the person may not feel the passion around this part of their life anyway. But if they do, it's a chance to tap into, hey, this is something that you've already experienced, you've already grown through in previous incarnations. How can you tap into that? So maybe this one's a little easier to work with. But this next question in some ways is very pivotal. Is the house lord sleeping? So this is one of the annihilation questions. And for me, this is where it's at, in that when one is sleeping, one does not put one's attention on what's happening, because your eyes are closed and your brain waves, your perception are actually in that, other world, dreaming, or, just not paying attention to anything. So in terms of wanting to have success in a house, in an area of life, if the house lord is asleep, this is where we can have an impact as an astrologer coach around attention and awareness. How can this client build their attention in this area of their life, knowing that the propensity, like the inertia of the chart, is always going to be to fall asleep, to take one's eyes off that area of the chart and just let it get all disheveled again. If we think about that area of the chart as being, of each of the houses as being a field within a garden or a farm, you can put in all this effort to dig up all of the weeds, organize all of the planting, get everything pegged and name all of the rows, and everything is all set, and you put in all that effort to renovate that field and get it working, this neglected field in the garden. And then what happens is pretty soon afterwards, back to distraction, take your eyes off it, and before you know it, when you turn back to that field, it's overgrown again. You can't tell the vegetables from the weeds. The birds have been at everything. You've lost your investment again. And this is the thing with Sushupti, that being asleep, attention, it's just the name of the game. So for me, as a lifetime meditator, my main increase awareness, increase attention strategy is to use meditation, because meditation is the practice of attention. You are practicing using your awareness through attention and sometimes through intention, but let's focus on the attention. You are training your awareness with attention. So I would say that is my number one homework in that area. But this is a lot where we can give habit building and just very simple, build a list, and every day make sure that you go and check that field and are the weeds still under control. And we want to implement all of those kind of sixth house attentive sort of behaviors, the list and the checking off and the making sure that we do it regularly. So I think this is a key one. Is the house lord sleeping? And if so, how can I build my attention in that area? And it's a little bit the key to success, isn't it? Anything that you give your attention to will flourish. But when we have Sushupti, the momentum of the chart is causing that asleep state. So we have to be extra attentive and go against the inertia of the chart. We have to add our own positive energy continuously until we form a new habit of being awake with that planet. Next question that we might like to focus on is, on the annihilation side, is the house lord with an evil house lord? So is it with the 3rd, the 6th, the 8th, the 11th, or the 12th? And when you look at the chart that you have in question, I think it's worth going to have a look at which one of those lords we're speaking about, and then maybe work with the person to see how that house, that evil, inverted commas, house lord, might be impacting. So if it's the 3rd, what is going on that is sabotaging success around the ego, around being competitive, around having courage? Is it that one is lacking courage and initiative, so therefore needs more? Or is it that one is being too egoistic, one is being too selfish and too competitive to allow the grace to flow? So we're going to look at what's going on with the 3rd being conjunct with the 3rd lord, what's actually happening. If it's the 6th lord, we've got all that energy around delays, obstacles, those daily tasks, the kind of chore energy. And how is that maybe demotivating the person, maybe bringing a heaviness, a tamasicness? So we can work with that and try to unpick that. Is it with the 8th lord, meaning potentially volatile change, an unreliable or inconsistent amount of vitality and energy, or perhaps also some of those hidden psychological kind of inner darkness things going on? So we can talk about how the 8th lord is affecting the person's success. Then we have the 11th lord, one of my personal favorite things to look at. You've already heard the podcast on that. How is the 11th lord perhaps interfering with grace, with dharma in this chart? It is the yoga breaker of yoga breakers. It's at the top of the yoga breaker pile there. It's the most powerful. So how is wanting recognition from our peer group, wanting so much to fit in, being fixated on aspirations and dreams, perhaps therefore not being grounded in reality? Have a look at what's going on with that 11th lord. And then the 12th lord also just a natural place of the energy leaving the chart, which it should be the 12th lord. It's kind of the 12th house of transcending the cycle that we're in. So it just has a natural energy sort of vacuum. So we think about it as being a place of losses, and can also be a very introverted and contemplative space, perhaps also escaping from our responsibilities. So can be really useful if we're wanting to pivot around our relationship with an annihilated house, to look at which house lords are perhaps interfering with that. Then next question, is the house lord not aspected by its lord? And this goes a little bit again, doesn't it, towards that awareness question. What can we do to bring the awareness of that house lord, of that planet, to this situation? Now, we know that the chart is not supporting that because of the layout, or for whatever reason, that planet is not rashly aspecting its own house. However, as conscious beings, we can use our attention to direct what we want and what we want to happen. It just takes more energy. It's going against the flow that's naturally set out there. But that's what we have the free will for. That's what we have our ability to choose for. And then finally, the question about, is the house lord being defeated in planetary war? So if you see this Udabala in the chart, it's good to just dig down into which is the planet that is winning in the planetary war, and what houses does it rule, what karakas does it rule, and then using that as a way to dig into how is that sabotaging success for this house lord and therefore for the house. And there might be some insights there that we can work with. So this is what I find so fascinating about prosperity and annihilation. I think it's a great set of questions just to open our minds to how a chart works. It kind of tells us about the importance of aspecting your own house, the importance of being awake, the importance of the company you keep, what sort of friends are supporting you, and what sort of enemies are challenging you. So I think it's a great set of questions in itself. As I said, I think it's one of those techniques you want to have other things to back up. I wouldn't bet the whole house on just this one formula. But then when you want to use it, what I love about it is all the levers that you have to have powerful conversations with clients about what might be sabotaging, what might be taking away energy, what might be causing friction, agitation, competitiveness, whatever it is. So I think all of these levers on the questions give you great inroads to have good coaching conversations. And then the final thing to keep in mind is that this is one technique among many. So you want to also make sure that you're looking at the Shadbala, the potencies of these planets, and their Lajatati Avashtas, what they're doing to each other by starvation or by delighting, and their dignity. So this is why it's really not on its own. It fits into a whole puzzle that builds up the richness of the chart. But it might be something that can unlock for a person some practical steps that they could take that acknowledge the energetic propensity of this house to be a bit infertile, but that gives them some practical tools to then change their attention and behavior. And I guess what this is a bit like is one of my favorite coaching poems it's called There's a Hole in My Sidewalk, The Romance of Self-Discovery by Portia Nelson. And it talks about, walking down the street, there's a big hole in the middle of the sidewalk and I fall in, and it takes so much energy to get out. And then I walk down the street again and I fall in all over again, and it still takes so much energy to get out of that hole. And it goes on like this. And I'm sure we've had that feeling, and this is a little bit like the annihilated house, that it can be an area where we almost become dejected, disappointed so many times that we just feel like everything's against us. And that's a bit like having the hole in the sidewalk, we just fall into it each time. Anyway, the beautiful thing about this poem is that I think it's the third verse, she sort of talks about, I walk down this same street, she sees the hole in the sidewalk, I see it, I fall in, but my eyes are open, I know what I have to do, and I get out immediately. And then this, in the fourth paragraph, she walks down the same street, she sees the hole and she walks around it. And then in the fifth, which I even love even more, she walks down a completely different street. And I think this is an analogy for us with annihilated houses, that they can be like holes in our sidewalk, that we can feel so disappointed and dejected about them because we've fallen in them so many times when other people seem to have no trouble at all. So then we can feel like a victim that we've got this hole in our sidewalk. And Brihat Parashara has given us a great way to objectively calculate if we do have a hole in our sidewalk. So now we're talking about those places where we actually have a hole in the sidewalk. But by giving us these questions, these are levers that help us walk around the hole. We can now clearly see that, when I start comparing myself to others, I fall in that hole. When I start feeling like it's all about me, I have to win, I have to compete, it's a scramble and I have to get to the top, I fall in that hole. When I take my eyes off the maintenance of my garden, or the going to the dentist every 6 months, whatever those sort of things are, I fall in the hole. So he gives us, Brihat Parashara has given us these levers that help us to identify where the hole is, and then we can walk around it. And I think it also ties in with me beautifully with a movie that I saw this month that I hope you guys got a chance to see. I think it was called Milton's Secret. It's Eckhart Tolle's movie for parents about parenting from an aware place. And right at the end, one of the lessons that the child shares is he sort of has a kind of love for alchemy. And he talks about a beaker, that we would do our alchemy experiments in, like a Bunsen burner beaker. And that actually it's our choice what we put in that beaker. So we can obsess about the things that are causing the hole in the sidewalk. And if we do, we've got absolutely all the data to do that. So the chart is telling us that, either we just can never keep on top of this, no matter what we do. It just seems to get out of control every time, or I just never remember anything about it, or, I feel that I'm jostling with all this other energy from other things that I'm supposed to be doing. I can't find the energy to look at it, whatever. You know the questions. We've been through them all. Now, we could fill up our alchemy beaker with those things, and that would be true. But this whole movie was kind of saying that it's our choice what we put in the beaker. So maybe we can, yes, those things are true, but I don't need any more of them in my alchemy beaker. And in fact, what I'm going to put in the beaker is, I'm a conscious, empowered being, and I'm going to keep my awareness on this problem as best as I can. Or I'm getting better at keeping my awareness on this problem. I'm getting better at using my supportive planets and supportive Rashi aspects to achieve more success in this area. Or I'm getting better at enjoying the challenges that Snape is setting for me, and knowing that the universal intention of Snape underneath everything is actually to prepare me the best for what is coming. So I like the Brihat Parashara formula because it gives us a chance to see what are the contributing factors, and therefore we can use those as levers either to help us identify the hole in the sidewalk, which is really useful, or to decide that we don't need to fill up our beaker with any more observations or victim statements about those annihilation scenarios. We don't need to fill that up anymore. Those are true and we've got them. That's fine. Now I'm going to concentrate on the things that I can change and the things that I do enjoy, and help me pivot my attention into that positive energy. Because this is the thing about prosperity and annihilation. That is, if you are on autopilot, the prosperity plays out and the annihilation plays out as it is in the chart. Anything that you do that is a positive, empowered action that you're doing in a conscious way will give you the free will to choose whatever direction that you want to take, whatever action that you want to take. So we want to fill the beaker up with those things that we can, those levers that the formula has given us that we can tweak, because we want to empower ourselves with this positive energy. And the more positive energy that we can generate in a grounded way, based on the reality of the chart, that positive energy is the extra and above the autopilot, and that allows us to steer in a different direction. So if you're feeling a bit defeated by some of the annihilation in the chart, just remember that if you want to, you can generate your own positive energy and make changes there. The prosperity annihilation formula is pointing out where you are going to need to do that, where that is absolutely your ball game to play. Like the ball is with you to change the game here, because if you don't, it's going to play out in this unfertile way. However, you can always change it, but you have to generate that energy because it's not naturally there in the layout of the planets in their relationship to the houses. All right. I hope that you enjoyed a revisiting of the prosperity and annihilation formula and a look at how to use it in the coaching environment. I wonder if you agree with me or what your experience has been. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll be waiting to interact with you until the next time that we get together on the Vedic Astrology Podcast. Thanks for joining me, guys. Bye.